audience is very interesting, the one where he says, only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. And this phrase, God has called him, is very interesting because there's a few things to it. So on one level, what it does is it reframes your life and spirituality in general vertically rather than horizontally. So what we tend to do is think of life horizontally. What am I going to do with my family? What am I going to do with my money? What am I going to do with my school life? What am I going to do with these things? And he says, actually, the question you have to answer is a vertical question. And the question is about this question of God. And some of you haven't really figured this out yet. You just relate to the world horizontally with normal things in life, and you haven't answered this vertical question yet of who is God? Did he actually appear in the person of Jesus? Did Jesus pay for my sins? Some of you haven't even wrestled the question about the existence of God to the ground yet. And of course, that was how I grew up, very skeptical, needed the philosophical, needed the historical, needed the psychological arguments to actually ever begin to believe in God. And so what he does is he says, some of you sitting here across these sites, you haven't figured this question of God out yet, and you got to figure this out. You got to wrestle this. Does he actually exist? Did he come through the veil? Did he come down in the person of Jesus? Did he live a perfect life in your place? You have to answer that question. And most historians would say, yes, Jesus was an actual historical person. There was at least 12 people outside the Bible that actually talked about Jesus that had no Christian agenda at all. And then the question is, okay, if he did exist, is he who he said he was? Because he made massive claims about himself. And is the tomb really empty? Because if that's true, then we have to all deal with the question of Jesus. All of that is kind of going around this question of the question of God. That is one of the massive questions of the masterclass of life. And you've got to figure it out, because as C.S. Lewis said, one day if God exists, you're going to face him as judge. And the question will not be you sitting around saying, yeah, but my neighbor wasn't a nice guy, so I didn't believe in Jesus. Or I read something about witches back in the day. They used to burn witches in the Christian church, and I don't like the things. And what C.S. Lewis said is that none of that's going to matter. He's going to be looking at you, not what you read in some books and what your neighbor did. The question is your heart, your mind, your life. What did you do with Jesus?